So here with Tony, blind author and world traveller, um, obviously based in the UK at the moment. We're joining him from his lounge room, I'm guessing, um, with a lovely little map of the world behind him of all the places that he's travelled to. Tony, thank you for your time.
Yeah. Hello.
So we're still waiting, obviously, on questions as they come in, but we might start off, Tony, by telling us or getting you to tell our listeners today on the webinar. You got about 38 at this point in time. Tony, tell us, how many countries have you been to?
Okay, so I've been to 148 countries. I was just looking at it the other day and updating my list on my website. So yeah, thus far 148. According to the UN, there's 193 official countries. And then I got some places of my own that are also classed as countries, a bit like Kosovo and Western Sahara, Greenland that the UN doesn't sort of class as countries. So the UN list of 193, I visited 125. My life goal is to visit every country in the world, also every island, every territory. I've also been to all 7 continents, including Antarctica, and that was pretty cool. So yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last sort of 22 years.
Now, Tony, you travel with just your white cane. You're blind and also mostly deaf. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, so I'm totally blind. I've got light sensitivity, but only sunlight. When I was a child, I had a lot of sensitivity that I could actually read and write with really black letters on white paper. I'm also classed as partially deaf or severely deaf now. This is also nerve damage. But I use digital hearing aids, and I went deaf when I was 4 or 5, and it's sort of got worse very slowly. So 1-to-1, I'm really good, and okay 2-to-1, and then it gets more difficult in crowds or social situations or large roads, lots of traffic or wind makes it harder to hear. But I cope, I guess.
Yeah, and I've obviously looked into a fair bit of what you've done. You've done a lot of work with the BBC. You've written 3 books around your traveling experiences, going to some very unique places.
I just published my 3rd book.
So Tony, why did you decide? Well, you obviously started traveling a little bit later as well. What made you decide that you wanted to be a world traveler?
So like a lot of people sort of wake up one day and think, oh, I want to travel around the world. It didn't start for me like that. It was a kind of natural progression. I got an older brother and sister, so my mum knew that although I was blind, I wasn't much different to those 2. And once I got given dark glasses, I was about 3 years old, I was able to run around and go outside. So I got sent to school about some 30 k's away when I was 5 years old. And that was like sort of introduction to any kind of traveling, really. And then at the age of 10, a little bit of light vision I had deteriorated. So I needed to go to another school to learn. So I went to a boarding school in Coventry, about 400 k's from my home. And I stayed there for 6 weeks and 8 weeks. And my first sort of idea was to get home as often as possible. So I got given mobility training, learned to use a long cane, get around. First to get around the school, which was quite big, lots of open fields, and then the local shops. And by the age of sort of 13, 14, 15, I was catching buses into the city and then catching trains home. And then when I was 16, I got the opportunity to go to Boston in the US with my school, and that was totally different. As people talk funny and louder than people in the UK, and everything was much bigger. The pavements were huge. And I remember eating a steak in a restaurant one night, and the steak filled the entire plate. And it was just a sense of atmosphere all around me, and I picked it up from hearing it and sensing it through my skin. And I had a week in the States. I thought I wanted more than this, and I went back with a friend who'd only got sight in one eye, so we had one eye between us. And we did the usual things. We went to New York, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and had a great time. Almost got arrested touching up the Statue of Lincoln, and I managed to turn around and show him my white cave and stop me getting arrested or shot. And And then I got a chance to study in South Carolina for 5 months in 2000 as part of an American study degree. And all my friends went down to Florida for spring break, and I was 22 years old. I thought they're not going to let me drink or party or whatever. So I thought, stuff them, I'll go to New Orleans by myself. And I knew where it was. I knew a bit about the history and the music. And so I got people at the uni to help me book a flight and book a hostel. And I've been staying in hostels, sort of sharing accommodation with other backpackers. And so at the age of 16, 17 in the UK, and I thought doing in the States would be easy. And then that's when I got to New Orleans. In the airport, just got a taxi to the hostel, and then that was my first sort of solo venture on my own outside the UK, and I managed to do that, and then sort of thought to myself, this is what I want to do, and get on with it. And I've been doing it ever since. And I love it. It's the challenge. It's the challenge of getting from A to B and meeting new people, eating new food, listening to new music, and that. Walking in the mountains and feeling the fresh air on my skin, or walking through the jungle and feeling different textures under my feet. I get audio guides if I go to somewhere historical, like a church or a mosque or something, or I do a lot of free walking tours around different cities, and it's all a big adventure. And ultimately, it's about meeting people from different countries and different cultures, and you don't need sight to do that. You're just talking to people. So to me, it's all fun. It's a challenge.
I love it, Tony. We've got some questions starting to come in. So what I might do, Tony, if you can maybe tilt your screen up a little bit with your camera. We're just seeing only half of your face, and somebody's come out saying that they'd like to see the rest of it. So there we go. Now we got you.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Tony.
Now you're looking at a bush with two eyes now.
So, Tony, first question we've got from Coy Newen. How do you write your book, Tony? I have an interest in writing as well, and I'm losing my eyesight, so I don't know how to keep writing with low vision in the future.
I started off learning Braille when I was at school, and I used Braille pretty much up until university level. And then this is back in the early 90s. And then I learned to touch type as well on a keyboard without speech. And then my 95, 96 speech software started to come in. So I learned to use JAWS, JAWS, which is a screen reading software. And basically I've been using that to read my emails and on my laptop, and then write using that. And I wrote a book in 2005, and it was my mum's idea. I'd been traveling. I'd been to Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia, and I'd just come back from a big trip around the world. My mum said, you should write a book so all my friends can see what you get up to. I don't want to write a book. I want to travel and go drinking. No, write a book. So I eventually sat down for about a year and a half and just wrote everything that happened in my entire life, wrote it all down, and then put it in a drawer, and then went off with a trip around Europe for about 6 or 7 weeks, came back, sort of edited it, and then sort of did that on and off for about 3 years. And one of my friends accidentally saw an advert for a new publisher on a train one day, told me about it. So I sent them an introductory letter and a couple of chapters. They said, this sounds interesting. A blind guy traveling around the world, doing crazy things, falling out of airplanes and jumping off bridges. That might make an interesting story. So I tied it up a bit more, made it more presentable, and in 2010 got published. And then I had all this stuff that was too much for one book, so I broke it down, and then eventually managed to get enough stuff for a second book, which came out in 2016, and then a third book, which has just come out the end of last year. And I just type away, and then I get people to, my mum helps me, and then I get professional people at the end to make it look presentable and sellable, and then I promote it on internet. And but I'm always writing emails. I'm always writing sort of stuff to myself. And even when I travel without a laptop, that I would use other people's computers and type. And then my mum did have to try to interpret my emails over the years. They're quite hilarious. So that's how I do. And then obviously there's lots of different software out there for people with some sight or you know. And the problem with Jaws is it's very expensive. My girlfriend uses a software called NVDA, which is free. She just downloads it. Unfortunately, I can't understand it very well. It sounds like a robot to me. So because of my hearing, a lack of hearing as well, I tend to need something that sounds clear, but also quite a bass sound. So I use Jaws, but there's lots of different softwares out there, apparently.
Just to follow up from that question there, Tony, do you just remember your traveling adventures as you do them, or do you sort of take notes as you go, or?
Well, now I sort of take notes more. When I was at the beginning, when I started traveling, it was just for fun. It was mainly escapism. There's no plan to write a book or sort of do this for a sort of semi-living. And I had to, because I was drinking pretty out of control in the early days, I had to email people and friends and say, what did I do? What did we get up to in this day and day? So I had a lot of help with the first book. And then I had a kidney problem in 2002. I had to stop drinking. So my travels after that were a bit more sober. So I was able to remember a lot more. Yeah, but I would say my memory is my biggest skill, my biggest asset. So yeah, I rely on my memory and then email people and do it that way, really. But I don't really make a lot of notes. I'll record things, sounds and stuff. And I make videos as well when I'm traveling around just for fun. And I take pictures. I think that's funny, a blind person taking photos. I just use a digital camera, so I take as many pictures as I want of sound or buildings, and then hopefully you get 1 or 2 good pictures out of 1,000. So,
Still waiting on a couple more questions, but
yeah.
While I've got you, Tony, just a quick question in regards to when you do travel around. As you said, you do travel around with just your white cane. Has that always been the case, or did you have help when you started off, or how did you get started?
When I kind of started off, because first trip was with my school, so I was with the staff and then other students, and not all of them were totally blind. I was 16. Obviously, I wasn't wandering around the States by myself. When I went over there to study, I was with my other mates who were all sighted. But when I went to New Orleans, I was by myself, and I was confident. I had total confidence. I've been given fantastic mobility teaching training from the age of 11, and I had teachers. I was at a specialist school for blind children and visually impaired children. I had teachers who told me I would do things. I never had a choice, really. They told me I'd go out and I'd be independent. And I was taught to cook and do other things and make my own bed. And I just went out. And then I started in the States, so I could speak the language for the most part, and I knew the infrastructure. Like when I went to New York City, I knew that it was on a grid system and I could just count blocks. And when I was on the metro or the subway, I could listen to the announcements. And basically, New York City works on a grid system, so I knew by the numbers if I was going up, down, or downtown. And then I just asked people. I had the confidence to talk to people and just ask people, can you give me directions? How many blocks to such and such a place? And then I went to Australia. Again, I could speak the language, or apart from a few funny words you use. And I went to Melbourne, and I had a friend there. And I knew that Melbourne, the center of Melbourne, was more or less on a grid system again. So I just sort of counted streets and asked people. And when I got lost or got stuck, I just would wave my white stick or say, hey, I need some help. And then as I got really confident, I went to Thailand and Vietnam, and that was more difficult. I didn't have the language. English wasn't the first language, and no infrastructure. And, Bangkok, you're walking along the street, all of a sudden you've got a giant hole in the way, or you're walking along the bridge and it breaks off. So you're walking in the streets with the traffic, but because I stayed in hostels, I stayed in backpacker places, I met other tourists, and I said, oh, where are you going today? I'm going around the city. Can I join you? And I made friends, and because people couldn't believe a blind guy was traveling around the world on their own, they just wanted to sort of take me under the wing and look after me. So that's how I did it to begin with. And when I first started, I also joined a lot of organized tours. So when I went to Ayers Rock, I could have got there independently, but it was actually cheaper to join a tour from Alice Springs for the day and do it myself. So I did a lot of that at the beginning, and then as I got more confident, and knew what I was doing and organized it more, then I was able to do things completely by myself and go to third world countries like Papua New Guinea and Indonesia where there's no infrastructure. But yeah, I met people when I was traveling and joined them for a few days and then met other people. But apart from my girlfriend, who I sort of spent the last sort of 8 years traveling with, and she's totally blind and she's from Greece. No, I do it myself and I just meet people. I like my own company and I like the freedoms. I could if I don't want to travel one day, I don't have to. If I want to go somewhere at 6 a.m, the next day I can. I don't have to wait for someone or compromise. So it's just me.
So we got a question from Martin. Is the white cane recognized in all countries? What's it like to be on crowded streets like in Japan where they don't speak the language?
I don't think the white cane is necessarily so completely understood in most countries, but most countries I've been to, there's always someone that seems to sort of understand I don't see too well. If they don't actually know what the cane means, they know there's something. Having the cane means there's something, disabled in some way or handicapped in some way, as some people still call it. And in Western Europe, a lot of people know you're blind or visually impaired. And in the UK, people assume if you've got a white cane and you've got a visual impairment. A lot of people think you can see something, especially if you're sort of walking around by yourself, or if you get off a train. A lot of people in the UK even assume you can see, because there's no way you can get off a train if you're blind in their mind. If you've got a guide dog, people tend to think, oh, you must be blind. So that can be a bit frustrating sometimes in the UK, because people think, oh, you can see something, so they'll point and give you directions with their hands, and you have to sort of explain to them, no, I'm actually totally blind, I'm just independent. And then as you sort of go into Eastern Europe, Asia, where they're less used to seeing disabled people on the streets, particularly Asia, then that's more difficult. But most people can sort of sense that there's something different. And in crowds and that, you sort of try and move with the people and go with the flow. That's it. It's more difficult. So we're like Japan. Well, not Japan so much, even though there's a language barrier. Japan's very organized for blind people, and they've actually got tactile lines on the ground in a lot of the major cities, like Tokyo and Osaka, that you can follow in the subway stations. So even though there might be 3 or 4 million people sort of all moving at once, you just sort of follow the noise really and follow the flow of people. In Japan, they're very helpful. Some countries are more difficult. Somewhere like Georgia or Armenia, Azerbaijan, more difficult. And in Asian countries, it's all pretty chaotic. When I was in Vietnam, the only way I could cross the road was just moving with the traffic. And you imagine 5,000 cyclists all moving at once, and you just walk across the road as it's moving and gaps open up. And as long as you keep moving and don't stop, it's a bit suicidal, but you're able to cross the road. So yeah, I get a lot of help when I'm traveling. It's pretty remarkable, the people that help me all over the world. And people must imagine, aren't you worried about being robbed or cheated, or when I'm using a cash machine in a country other than the States or the UK, where the ATM machine's taught, I have to find someone I can trust to help me use a cash machine. It's just about listening to people and working out who I can trust, and then just hoping they don't rob me. But it's never happened so far, fortunately. Yeah.
We've got a question from Adrian. Are there any apps that you find helpful when you're traveling?
Any
apps, phone apps?
Well, this might shock your audience. I don't use an iPhone or a smartphone or an Android. I don't use technology like that. I started traveling before technology was really coming. I started sort of traveling when the internet was only sort of coming into its sort of form. So in the early days, I didn't travel with a laptop or a phone or anything. I just went out there and met people and used word of mouth, and then did a bit of research before I went traveling, my mum was sort of really Lonely Planet guidebooks to me, and I'd remember the main cities and that. And of course, with my education and listening to the radio, I knew, like in Australia and New Zealand, where the major cities were, and then anything else in between, I just asked people as I went. And as I've gone to sort of more complicated places and countries where it's more difficult to pronounce the names and that, I've started traveling with a laptop. I don't really like smartphones. I don't like the idea of swiping. And I really struggle to hear the iPhones and Android phones with my hearing. So I'd never bothered.
So, Tony, obviously, COVID has stopped travel at this point in time.
Yeah.
Do you have do you have plans of where you would like to go next when, well, if and when things relax?
Yeah, my first port of call will be my girlfriend just got her vaccine last week, actually. I'm hoping to get mine in the next couple of months. And then, so my first stop would be Greece, to go and see her for a couple of months. And then once we sort of get into the sort of spring and summer, and hopefully more and more countries and people are getting the vaccine, and the world hopefully will get back to a more normal stage. I want to go to Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal and Pakistan. And I was actually planned the trip to go to Bangladesh, Bhutan and Nepal last March. And I had to change that trip, and I went to Botswana, Zimbabwe and Zambia instead. And I was actually in Zambia at the end of March, and I was about to go to Namibia when everything got shut down. So I almost got stuck in Zambia. I managed to find a last minute flight back to the UK, and I got here April the 1st. I've been here since. But I've not seen my family since September. I live about 110 k's from them. But I'm coping, I'm keeping busy. I just published my latest travel book, and that's been keeping me busy the last couple of months editing that. So, cooking and playing music and listening to a lot of audiobooks. So I'm lucky that I'm only a 4 or 5 minute walk from the beach. I'm able to go out for about an hour a day each day and listen to the sea. So that's quite good, quite therapeutic.
Tony, we have a question from Lynn. Do you have any observations about the differences between countries and cultures in the way you're treated as a person who is blind?
Yeah, I feel every country is different, or at least most countries are different. Most countries are quite interesting, but it does vary from country to country. And even within countries, it varies. I mean, just within the UK, I noticed a difference that, like, in London, people are much more aware of blindness and the more rural parts of the UK. But certainly, as someone like Italy, is probably the worst country I've been to in that regard, because Italian people just don't really get blind people, and they don't really want to help. And even when I travel to Italy with my girlfriend, who speaks quite good Italian, we just don't get a lot of help. People just point when we ask for directions, and quite frustrating. And then you get to somewhere like the States, where everyone wants to help you almost, and almost over helpful. So yeah, and then obviously the countries, the poorer countries, actually, funny enough, I find people in the poorer countries seem to have less than what we consider things are important, items and that. They seem a lot happier, and they seem a lot more understanding. I traveled to Africa several times, and I find in African cities, they sort of want things, want what Western people have, and they see the richness. And then as you go into the rural parts and the countryside, where people have a lot less, they seem more happy, and they don't desire that Western lifestyle so much. And a lot of the villages I've been to in Africa, people just, the fact that I'm blind is nothing unusual, because a lot of their family members are blind or visually impaired or crippled. I've been in Mozambique and met people who've been injured by landmines. And when I stayed in Malawi, I met a blind boy who went blind when he was about 2 years old through malaria. And the people in the villages seem a lot more understanding. just who you are. So yeah. In Asia again, people seem to find it very strange, don't really understand it. If you're sort of disabled in a lot of Asian countries, you're just hidden away, you're kept within the family. So seeing a blind person walking on the streets with a cane and sort of stumbling about, is a lot of people just stare or come up and touch me, and that's sort of, yeah, a strange question. So, but I think by going out and traveling and meeting people from different cultures, I'm teaching them. I'm showing them that we're blind. That just means our eyes don't work. Doesn't mean our brain doesn't work, and no different to them. I can talk. I can have a conversation. I can eat a meal. You know, and just an alternative outlook on life. So we're educating each other. Hopefully, that's the idea of it.
All right, we've got a question from Sadia or Sadaya. My apologies if I'm what advice would you give to youth in how to reassure their family and friends they can travel with a vision impairment independently, especially worried parents?
Oh yeah, when I first went traveling, my parents worried quite a lot. My brother and sister, especially as I didn't phone home for 3 months the first time I went traveling.
That would have made you popular.
Yeah, and partying most nights, and Tony seems to have disappeared off the planet. So I also say to parents that you've got to let your children live. Of course, you're going to worry about them. That's natural. You worry about them if they're sighted. And, you know, I just sort of put plans in place so you can reassure your families. And the first time I traveled, I made copies of my passport and all my flights and stuff and that, and left them with my families. And then obviously with the internet now, it's quite easy. You can be phoning home all the time and emailing home all the time, and, you know, instant messenger in most countries. And so that hopefully is to reassure them. And I often say to a lot of disabled people who don't think they could travel, I find it scary, just start off simple. When I started with countries where I could speak the language and I knew what the infrastructure would be like, and if I could cope with that, it'd be fairly simple. And I was, you know, if you're worried about, you want to go somewhere in your own country for a weekend, and then just go with a friend or a family member, and just make more small steps. And if you like that, do another weekend, and then you go a bit further, and then just build up your confidence in that. And I would say that, you know, the families of people who are blind and visually impaired and friends of, you know, just, they might be blind or visually impaired, but they're still a human being. Let them be, let them explore, let them expand their horizons. And, you know, because one day the parents aren't going to be there. And if the blind and visually impaired don't have that independence, they're going to struggle when the family aren't around. So the more independent we can be, the better we are in the long term. My mum realised at a really young age that I needed to be educated. As a child, it would be okay. People would take pity of me and that and make excuses. But as an adult, there's no excuses. The world doesn't let you get away with things. So she knew I needed to be educated, independent. So, yeah. I hope that helps.
Tony, we're just waiting on a couple more questions, but I will jump in because I've obviously looked a lot into the work that you've done with the BBC. How do you find the locations that you want to get to? And I know you're a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the things you've done there and whether they were what you would anticipate?
Yeah, so now I'm because I went to a visually impaired school and School for the Blind, I was taught about geography from a young age and introduced to tactile maps, which I've got all over my walls instead of pictures. But these are made by the Royal National Institute for the Blind, and they made of different plastics. So the seas and the oceans are smooth, and then the land masses are raised shapes, and then the rivers within the countries and continents are indented lines, and there's a large dot for each major city. So something like say in North America, in the USA, there's a big dot for Los Angeles, and then there's braille abbreviations like LA, Los Angeles, SS for San Francisco. And then I got a big map, continent of Australasia or Oceania. And on that is a big, huge sort of shape of Australia. And at the bottom, you've got the Great Bight, which, you know, the big sort of indented piece of bite out of the landmass. And then Melbourne would be ML and Sydney's SY in braille letters. And there's a big lump dot next to them, so I can feel the shape of Australia, and then I can feel where the major cities are. And that's how I sort of plan my routes in countries I know quite a lot about. And then I got my mum to make me maps over the years of countries I know less about in Asia and Africa. And I've heard of them, but I don't necessarily know where they are in location to each other. So she's got this kind of orangey glue stuff. So she draws around the borderlines of each countries on the continent, and I can feel them. And again, we put like a big blob on the major cities, the capital cities, and I braille the abbreviations. And then once I decided which countries I want to go to, I get on the internet, and I'll go to Wiki Travel on Google, and I'll put in, say, Wiki Travel Melbourne or Wiki Travel Sydney, and I'll find the link and click on it, and then I'll read about Sydney, and I'll make notes in a Word document before I travel. So I want to know when I land in Sydney or Melbourne, how can I get to the airport from where I'm staying? So is it a taxi? They're probably expensive. So can I get there by metro or bus or train? Things like that. And then I want to know what the weather's like. And then I need to know like maybe visa information, what kind of currency I'm going to need. And after that, what accommodation is there? I don't want to stay in hotels because they're expensive and they're boring. We don't meet anyone. So I want to find interesting accommodation. And then after that, I want to find out what attractions are there to visit in Sydney or Melbourne, or are there museums with audio guides? Are there walking tours I can do around the city? Are there historical places I can visit because I'm interested in history? Are there mountains or rivers, or I go to South America, can I go and hike in the Amazon for 2 days and get tours and stuff? So I research all this info and I put it into a Word document, and then I'll put that onto a little gadget I've got called a Victor screen reader, and it's tactile, and then I can put MP3 files on it and Word documents, and I can listen to this info as I'm traveling on a bus or a train or a plane. And then once I get to my accommodation or where I'm staying, I can say, hi, I want to go to this place I found out about. How do I get there? And they say, oh, you go out the hostel, you turn left and you walk down the street, or you need to take bus such and such a number. And then when I'm going to a country, say like in Japan or the Philippines or somewhere I don't speak the language, English isn't the first language, like Eastern Europe, Russia. I went to Russia with my girlfriend, and I planned it. I booked all the train trips beforehand because I knew that in the train station in Russia, there's no English. So I have a lot of plans and I do a lot of research. And then when I get there, like I say, I meet people and make connections, and then a lot of it's word of mouth. And that's how I travel. And then when I go for my accommodation and I go out walking in the streets in a foreign city, and I'm trying to get to this location, this landmark I want to visit, I'll get someone who can speak the local language to write down directions in the local language. And I'll just keep meeting people and showing people. And I'll walk in the cafes or shops and ask people. And if I get lost, I make sure I take a car with the address of where I'm staying, and I'll just shout taxi. And it's just sort of a universal word, and get in a taxi and it'll take me back to where I'm staying. So I have lots of backup plans. That's how I sort of do it. And then, I like to do lots of crazy adrenaline stuff. The first time I went to Australia, I was up in Cairns, and someone said, oh, how about doing a skydive? I said, oh, right, what's that? I said, oh, you go for an airplane, jump out of a plane. I said, that sounds like fun. Yeah, I'm up for that. And then I went to New Zealand, and someone was telling me about bungee jumping, and they sort of described it. I went, what? So they tie your ankles together and put a piece of rubber on your ankles and throw you off a bridge. I said, oh, right, that sounds fun. So I did 6 of them. And of course, being blind, I got the advantage. I can't see the bottom. So I just jump off. And I've done 17 bungee jumps so far. Skydived 3 times. rafted in the Tully River. What else? Yeah, I nearly drowned in Zambia rafting. I fell out the raft into a massive rapid. That was fun. All kinds of crazy stuff. I went jet skiing in Cape Town. That was amazing. Obviously, I wasn't driving. That was wicked. Did that for about 90 minutes. I've been zorbing. You know what zorbing is? They stick you in a massive big beach ball or football and roll you down a hill. So I like anything like that because I got to feel things. I can't see it. I can imagine something, but I need to feel it all. That's why I like doing crazy bungee stuff. And I don't know when it's going to happen. I want to try anything like that. I want to do ice climbing, and I've never skied. I skied on grass once, and I water skied. But I'd like to ski on snow. That would be interesting. How do I avoid the trees? But yeah, I'm up for anything, any adrenaline rush. Life's for living. Life's for living.
We got a question from Lynn. Do you still stay in hostels, or have you found other kinds of accommodation that you prefer?
So yeah, I still stay in hostels when there's no alternative. But for the last 10 years, I've been doing something called Couchsurfing, which is a website someone told me about 12, 13 years ago. And people have profiles, and then you can read their profile online. It describes their accommodation, whether you've got a private room or you're just sleeping on their couch or the floor. And then it gives a bit of info about them. And then usually they've had other people stay, so you can read people's reviews and see if they've got good reviews or bad reviews. And then and the good thing about Couchsurfing is it's free. And so you go and stay with someone for free, and it's like an exchange of cultures, really. So they're inviting you because a lot of the time they can't travel, they can't afford to. So they're inviting the world to them, and then just the shares of ideas, shares of cultures, and then they let you stay for free, and then you'd offer to say pay for breakfast or the meal, or you might take them out for a meal just to say thank you. And you normally just sort of say 2 or 3 days, and then you go from there. Maybe you say longer if they can or you want to. And I've made so many friends with Couchsurfing, and most of the time you're staying with a local person, so you're getting a real insight of the real culture. Hostels are great because you're meeting other like-minded travelers and stuff, but a lot of times you might never meet a local person in a hostel. So I like to both. And then when I travel with my girlfriend, we want a bit more private accommodation, so more guest houses and stuff. My girlfriend's not quite as adventurous as me, but she's done a couple of couch surfing stuff, but it's a bit more difficult trying to get a couch when you're a couple. It's a lot easier on your own. But it's great fun couch surfing. And then you can look at people's profiles. So it sounds a bit risky, but women can find women to stay with, and so you just need to check their profiles and that. And then often I'll contact my couch surfer, and I always tell them I'm blind. So they got the choice of accepting me then, or sort of discovering what that's like, and they can't really imagine a blind guy traveling. So some people are interested, and other people will say, no, I can't do it, or I don't want the responsibility. So then you just find someone else. But yeah.
I got a question from Arthur. Can you please explain how you compile the info before the trip in the format that you can access during the trip?
So say that again, sorry?
So I think you might have touched on that a little bit before, but Tony's wanting to know, can you please explain how you compile the info before the trip in a format that you can access efficiently during the trip? So you obviously put things on a Word document. How do you access the Word document while you're traveling?
So I've got 2 options. So if I take my laptop, obviously I can access off on the laptop. But if I do a trip where I don't take the laptop, like I'm all third world country and I'm a bit worried about it getting stolen, I can put it onto a digital device. And I connect that to the laptop before I go and put the Word document on it. And it talks to me. The buttons are a bit like set out like a telephone. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the dot, 2 dots on the number 5. It's got an MP3 card in it, so I can access the Word document. I put headphones in it, and then I can listen. It talks to me, and I can use the keys to do different things to read the document word by word, line by line, letter by letter, or listen to it. and I can record phone numbers, and I can put my talking books on there, music on there. So, and then I can get to someone's house or a hostel, and I can get someone to get information on a computer for me and put it into a Word document form and download it onto my device for me. So I've got those two options. And then, of course, a lot of the time I still using word of mouth and just asking people, what's there to see in your city? And it's this place, how do I get there? And then I can take a taxi, or again, I can find out public transport or walk. So it's a combination of all that. And people say, well, why don't you take an iPhone or an Android phone? Well, first of all, someone like Africa or poor countries in Asia, probably someone would steal it. So I'd lose the information. And also a lot of countries I visit, there's just no access to the internet. It's, so yeah.
Have you had things stolen from you, Tony, while you've been traveling?
Yeah, of course. Most people have. Had a laptop taken from a hotel room in Cape Verde, which is an island country off Senegal in the Atlantic Ocean. Had cameras taken from me. I asked someone to take a picture of me in the doorway of a church in Serbia, and they just walked off with a camera. And I thought, oh, I couldn't really run after them. I've had that happen a couple of times. I had all my stuff stolen or taken or removed when I was camping in the Yukon in North Canada. And I put my tent, small one-man tent, in a field next to a gravel path so I could find it at night with my cane and my feet, and put my backpacks in, put a padlock on it, and went out for the day. And I knew it was behind a bus station and opposite a well-known cafe. But I was right up in far North Canada. And I come back in the evening and had dinner, then went across to find my tent, and found the gravel path and walking up and down, swinging my cane, or maybe I'm walking past it. So eventually I got to the side of the road, I get into traffic, I managed to stop a car, and he says, this blind guy on the road, what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking for me tent, mate. He couldn't believe it. This 19-year-old kid delivering pizzas. So he got a flashlight and come and had a look, and he couldn't find it. So he took me to a Salvation Army place for the night, and he said, oh, I'll come back the next morning, we'll find your tent. And unfortunately, it all gone. I don't know to this day whether it had been stolen or taken or what. And I went to the police, and he said, oh, maybe a grizzly bear had stolen it. And I said, yeah, right. so I've had things like that happen, but to me, it's all part of traveling. It's, I've met people who've been shot and knifed and had worse things happen to them, unfortunately, and I'm totally blind and I'm partially deaf, and it's never happened to me. So I consider myself lucky. But, life is not without risk. I could stay at home and live in England and my little flat and read books all day and listen to rock music, but I'd be bored after 10 minutes. I need that challenge. I think most people in the world are kind and helpful, and they just want a simple life and put food on the table for their family, and they're kind and considerate. You always get some arseholes, but that's life, isn't it? Life's for living.
Tony, question from Gemma. Have you ever felt unsafe in a particular country situation during one of your experiences, like perhaps bungee jumping?
I've never felt unsafe bungee jumping or skydiving, no, because I know that the people who run these organisations, they want to look after people, because I know if somebody died or got injured doing their activity, we shut their company down in seconds. So I've always felt fairly comfortable doing a crazy activity. I've sometimes felt a bit uncomfortable in a couple of cities. The first time I went to Caracas, capital of Venezuela, that's one of the most dangerous cities in the world. I felt a little uncomfortable being on the streets, even though I was with a local guy. I was quite aware that something could happen. Any particular moment, someone could pull a knife or a gun on us on the street, just because people are so desperate. And also, and the first time I was in Johannesburg, similarly, not that I'd been attacked myself, but more that it's just the fact that there's a lot of gun crime in Johannesburg day to day. And this was back in 2004. But just a little that comes on the streets, just being aware that it could have been caught in the crossfire or something. But as I got older and more confident, I've become less worried about my safety, really. And I've had a few incidents in Africa, and that's probably my biggest worry is where I'm at borders and going from one country to another, and I have to give my passport over to someone. Obviously, I can't see where it goes, and that's the biggest worry. I have to hope it's going to come back again. And on occasion, I've had to pay a security person money to get my passport back, things like that. And I've also ended up entering countries and not being given the entry stamp. And that can be quite frustrating, quite stressful, because then you end up in situations where you're paying a bribe to someone. And of course, when you're blind, you assume you've got your stamp and you hear them bang it, but you don't necessarily know you've got the stamp until you turn up at your next border crossing. I've had a few tight spots in that regard. But overall, no, I don't worry about my safety.
Okay, got a question from Phil. Are there any countries that you worry you might not be able to visit?
Yeah. Well, I've been to a couple of countries that the United States are not too happy with me visiting. So I tried to apply for an electronic visa a couple of years ago when my girlfriend and I went to Canada, and we were going to go to the States to see some friends. And she got one, no problem, but I was denied a visa because I stupidly put on the form I'd been to Sudan. And I don't exactly know if that's what it was, but it just automatically refused me an ESTA. And I'd also been to Palestine. So a few countries like that may make it more difficult to get into the US. So I probably just have to wait until the passport I got at the moment expires and get a new passport, and hopefully things will be a little bit easier. But there's a few stupid things like that. But otherwise, I don't see why I can't go to any country. Again, the UK government sort of saying people can't go to Syria and stuff, which is, again, seems a bit stupid, really. But I'm not a terrorist. But things like that. But apart from that, no, I go to every country in the world. That's what I want to. Despite some countries' diabolical policies, there's no country I wouldn't visit.
Tony, a lot of travel agents will describe a life-changing travel experience. Do you have one?
Apart from being born?
Something you would say that somebody really is missing out on if they don't experience it in their lifetime.
Yeah, if you don't go traveling at some point, you are missing out. You're just missing out on all the smells and sounds and differences and just different cultures, just being exposed to people that do what you and I do, but in a different way, or approach something differently. Just sitting around a hostel in somewhere like Livingstone, Zambia, which is a very safe city, and different people coming in with different countries you've never heard of, who speak different funny languages or pronounce words differently, and we talk about a subject or whatever it might be, where a gender or race or something, and they just have a different approach to it. And I never thought about looking at an issue that way before, and that whole enlightenment of just different cultures and how people in different countries, different religions and different ethnicities all cope with things and understand things and solve problems. And I mean, that's the biggest thing that traveling has taught me is to be myself and accept myself. When I first went traveling, I thought people had helped me in that because I was blind and deaf, but I didn't realize that people actually wanted to be around me because they liked me, my personality, and this traveling taught me that I'm an okay person. And it also taught me that being blind isn't the biggest thing in the world. It's difficult, as its challenges, of course it does, but everyone does. And everyone in the world has some kind of disability. People think they're too fat or too thin or too tall or too small. A lot of it's confidence. A lot of it it really astonished me that when I travelled to Antarctica and I was this blind person on a ship of 80 other sighted people, and at the end of the cruise of 10 days, whatever it was, and they see me wandering around the snow and the ice with my guide in Antarctica, sighted people come out and said to me, "You've inspired me and you've encouraged me to do things I thought I'd do." And I think, these are sighted people, they got no issues. And it made me realize that we've all got issues, and it's confidences. And I just believe that we can all go out and do what we want and live our dreams. And hopefully that's what my story does. It inspires people and shows people they can live their dream. They don't have to go and travel around the world and throw themselves off bridges, but just making a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or just walking up the street, it can be done. And you break those barriers down one day at a time. That's all I'm trying to show people. And it's about helping each other. I'm always asking for help, even though I'm independent. I always need someone to do for me, and then I'm helping other people because I'm showing sighted people that you can look at the world and you can look at a country differently. Don't just have to see a country through your eyes, but all your senses, and you use all your senses to get an even better experience of travel or whatever it is you want to do.
So Tony, we're approaching an hour, so I might. That's a fantastic way to wrap
it's almost
up.
time for the cricket. So.
Just wanted to quickly, obviously, thank you for your time in having a chat to us. Where can people find your books, basically?
So my latest book's called "Seeing a Slice of Southern Africa My Way." It's out as Amazon, Apple, as ebook only. And then my other books are Seeing the World My Way. It's my first one. It involves going to Australia for 2 months. And then my second book is Seeing the Americas My Way. They're all on Amazon, Apple. And people can also go to my website, Tony the Traveller with 2 L's.com. And I'm also on Facebook. People can find me Tony Giles, Giles, or Tony the Traveller. And I'm on Twitter, which I don't really use much, but I do post. So I'm all over that. Facebook, and people can email me through my website.
We also have some of your books on our Vision Australia library. We have, I believe, your first book. I believe we have your second as well, but I'll have to check on that. But
right, okay, cool, yeah.
We'll obviously be waiting on your third book to come through. Just a quick question from Jenna. Your maps that you spoke about, the textile ones, did your mum do those up, or did you got them from?
So from the Royal National Institute for the Blind in the UK. I don't know if they make them anymore. There's a lot less. When I was growing up, lots of schools for blind kids, so that's why they were produced. I don't know if they're still made, but they probably have old one. Whether I would imagine there'd be something similar in Australia, I'd have thought, because it's just a case of them being laminated, and there's different ways they can be made these days. I don't know if Vision Australia do anything like that, but it's
Jenna, we'll have to get in contact and
sure it's possible.
Look into that for you. Tony, just one other question, or one other sort of touch on your latest book. I saw an interview with you recently where you spoke about your first experience with an elephant. Was that in this book, or is that in your last book? So the touching an elephant.
There's an elephant. I get to ride an elephant in my new book in Zimbabwe, and then just recently last year I got to feed an elephant in Zambia, and I've got some videos of that, but that's not in any books yet.
No, I brought it up because it was hilarious when you were describing what an elephant felt like and what you imagined it would feel like. It's completely different.
That's in this book. Yeah, that's in the new one. Yeah, yes, it's quite interesting. I got to put my hand in a few places I didn't expect to.
So we'll probably we'll wrap up there. Thank you so much for your time, Tony. For those that were interested as well, we did an interview for Vision Australia Radio that I believe will be going live through Talking Vision in the
absolute pleasure.
Future. I'd just like
to leave your audience with this. My favourite country, of course, is New Zealand.
Yes,
Have a good day, everyone.
No worries. Thank you, Tony. All the
Cheers,
best.
pleasure. All the best.
Vision Australia.
Blindness,
Low vision.
Opportunity.
Vision Australia logo. 3 navy blue ovals linked together diagonally within a bright yellow rectangle.